All right. Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome back to Kayak Fishing Weekly, the show here on the Serious Angler Podcast Network that is dedicated to everything kayak fishing. As always, I'm your host, and I'm here with my counterpart, Mr. Justin Largen. Justin, what's going on, man? You're muted. It's all good.
Starting off right.
That's right.
No, I was saying I missed not taping last week. It was
No.
feels weird. I didn't get enough kayak fishing in my life.
Yeah, and I will take 100% blame for this because I was telling folks over on Serious Angler, one of our shows here on the network, that I had a work trip out to Wisconsin, and I had it planned out. Like, we even had a time slated that we were going to film while I was at the hotel. I even brought my equipment with me and everything. And I need to learn my lesson with this because I go on these work trips and I'm like, I'm going to grind out work while I'm there. Like, I'm going to get up at 5. I'm going to do my editing, which I do. Like, I'll do that. I'll go like work out at the hotel, do editing for an hour, and then go start on my day, like getting ready for conference meetings or whatever. And then I'm like, yeah, we should be back by dinner, like at 7:30. So I could probably sneak in a podcast before I go to bed that night or whatever. Never happens that way because then you get one of your buddies from work. It's like, hey, let's go for a beer. Let's do this. We got to be with the client or whatever. And I'm like, you look at the clock and it's like 9. And I'm like, dang it. And then it's like, hey, Justin, I think we're going to have to postpone this. So I'll take the full blame for that.
No, man, it's crazy enough. Just the recording part, finding a time to do that is crazy. But the editing, I don't even, it's like, I'm glad that's not on me just yet.
Yeah.
That's not, I didn't even like trying to edit like photos.
Yeah. Like, well, when it comes to video editing, like, especially like, I mean, we're talking to preach to the choir to our guest today when it comes to the YouTube standpoint, but that's where like the time comes in for that. I do the most. Thankfully, the podcasting thing for people that are curious and that Justin is quickly learning here is that the hardest part is scheduling. That is easily the hardest part of this. It's easy to click record and talk. That's the easiest part of podcasting. It's finding the dang time to be like, hey, this works from all of our calendars. That trying to find 2, 3, especially when you get larger than that number, to find schedules that line up. It's you wouldn't think it's that hard, but it is. It's a struggle.
It's almost like a relief when we actually are when the recording starts. It's kind of different.
Yeah.
Lots. Yeah, like it used to, normally it'd be like you'd think it would be the other way around. Like you'd start to get the nerves. Oh, we got to get ready for the show, but it's like the relief happens at the beginning of the show.
Right.
It's kind of
no
cool.
Kidding. We're just like, okay, we're here. Let's start now before something else gets in the way. But nonetheless, we are back for another show of Kayak Fishing Weekly. Our past podcast, our recent one, was 2 weeks ago. Obviously, we're mentioning we missed last week. Apologies for that. But it was with Christine Fisher. Sorry, that was 3 weeks ago. Our most recent episode was Russ Snyder. A great episode of Russ talking about his whole beginning getting into kayak fishing and why he's most likely what we would claim as the greatest kayak angler so far in kayak fishing history. There's a lot of reason for that, and it was a great show of us talking to him about exactly that subject. So feel free to go back, either watch whether you're on YouTube or give it a listen if you're listening to this current episode at the moment. Check out some of the shows we're in because I think this is 5, episode 6. It's really bad that I can't remember that many episodes right now. It's under the number of 10.
I can't either. I don't have enough fingers.
Yeah. But nonetheless, check those shows out. And obviously, we have another great one today with our pal, Mr. John Dalton from Creek Fishing Adventures. If you don't know John and you watch any videos on YouTube, you probably live under a rock. But nonetheless, John is one of the greatest people I have met through the industry. And I haven't spent that much time with him. It's just I have 40 different people telling me how awesome John is. And I've been a watcher of his content for a very long time now. And it's one we're going to get into a little bit here. Obviously, we have some more stuff to go through before we get John on the show, but I quickly just want to add, I'm so intrigued by John's content because I think for me, I mean, we talked about this, Justin, like why you and I work so well is we're polar opposites when it comes to fishing. Where I want to be, I don't want to see the bank at all when I'm fishing. Like I want to be in the middle of Lake Ontario, where John's like in the smallest creek with a kayak, and I'm like, it's just so intriguing. This is like the polar opposite of me, and it's honestly, it's a nice breath of fresh air when I go to watch content. Like I've been on a crazy kick lately of like some hunting videos, and like guys like I can't for the life of me now watch a video of a guy sitting in a box blind hunting where I want to go watch guys that are like stalking in the Adirondack Mountains and snow. Like that's I don't know. I don't know if that translates to what we're talking about here, but nonetheless, I just love his content.
I thought that was an out west thing. There's actually guys that do that on the East Coast.
Dude, everywhere. Everywhere is I mean,
Really?
it's obviously some terrain is easier than others, but like especially in the Northeast, there's like a big cult following of like and this is I've been really bad lately on Serious Angler and also here now of talking about hunting and getting on a hunting kick. But there's this cult following for hunting mountain bucks, and mountain bucks are like really hard to pattern and go sit in a tree stand for. They're great whereas if you can understand their patterns of stalking them. There's and I'm not going to talk like I'm some expert because I'm not. It's just more what I see from the outside looking in. Um, but there's like this trend of guys out there that film their hunts and they get excited every year for the first snow because the first snow when it's that first day of that layer down snow and there's tracks that day, those are like fresh and that's like their best time to go and kill a big buck. So it was I don't know, it's been something I've been on a kick lately and on a kayak side of it though, it's one where I've now for whatever reason gotten in my brain the next couple years that I want to go uh kill a deer and use the kayak to do so. Like I want to use my kayak as a means to get in there. You know what I mean? Like something that would take me miles and miles on feet where it'd make it easier if I use
Yeah.
the kayak. And I've seen new canoes do it. I've never seen a deer in a Hobie before. I want to be one of the first ones to do it.
What is Cody Henley run?
I think he's a
Um,
Hobie. He's probably done it. That dude's bad at the
Dude,
bone.
there's a video. I gotta find it. I don't. I think it was this year, maybe a year old, where he found one that was like drowning in the river, and like
Oh
pulled it into
yeah.
the kayak,
Yeah.
and I think it ended up dying anyway. Like I don't know what ended up killing it. He didn't. He was trying to save the thing. It's pretty crazy. But that's the first thing that popped into my head when you're talking about dragging a deer around in a kayak.
That I know exactly what you're talking about now. I'm gonna actually reach out to him about that and see if we can share that content. But that might actually be a deserving next week kayak fishing king queen of the week. But I've seen that video and it was a pro angler that he put that deer in. I think it was a decent buck too. And so he almost beat me to the punch, but he didn't kill it. So the goal is still there. It can be done.
I like it.
But one thing that was cool before we get John here on the show that we told you guys when we seen certain things in the industry, kayak fishing specifically, we were going to share it with you. I saw it actually this afternoon. It was super last minute, and I sent it over to Justin. And I'm like, dude, this thing's freaking sweet. It looks like a
It,
suitcase that turns into a catamaran style kayak, and it could be just me. I've never seen it. Have you seen this before? I'm gonna
no,
share
I
it.
when the first image that I saw of it was the image of it like fully expanded, I guess, like where it looks a lot like a blue sky. I forget who
Yes,
makes that, but it looks
it is
like
Blue
the
Sky. I
blue
think it's
sky
Jackson,
deal.
right?
I think so.
So
But
all
it,
the
it
credit goes to the real Yak Dragger on Instagram. He posted the video. I don't know if it's his content that he shot or what, but this was a post on his page. That's where we're getting it from, but that's where we're gonna put the credits to. But I'll play it right here. It's super freaking cool. It looks like an oversized suitcase
yeah,
that turns into this big catamaran kayak, and he's moving in it too. Like it's actually a pretty sweet deal. I'm assuming John's just gonna go break into this thing now and roam the creek. I think that's a little bit too big for a creek, but the ideal of how mobile that is, like I don't know, it's just super intriguing to me. The
yeah.
first thing I thought, you actually see because this is Instagram, you can see the comments. I put in a gif of a transformer.
That's the first thing I thought of too.
So, I mean, someone that has this got to have their rig called Optimus Prime. It's got to be done.
Those C-Tug wheels are good too. I mean, I feel like that thing with it compact like that. I'm curious. My thinking is that it would be easier to maneuver, like to drag that thing down a
Yeah.
trail with it more compact. But I'm curious if anybody that actually has one, or I'm curious if they're even on the market yet. But it looks really cool.
It is. And I took that and I shared it with my local dealer that I work with at Morgan Marine, Ryan Kennedy. He's the man. And he probably hates me at this point because I send him so many different things I see and ideas I have for kayak setups, and I'm like, dude, how do we get our hands on this thing? I just want to try it. But he was actually pretty intrigued as well. But I thought that was pretty cool, and thought the folks should be shared with that. And we'll, if you guys don't know what we're talking about, we'll leave a link down in the show notes so you guys can check it out for yourself. But um, nonetheless, I don't have anything else until we bring on our man here, John Dalton. But do you got anything else for the folks, Justin?
No, maybe we talk in the next episode about I think it's the native schedule just dropped.
Oh, it did.
But
Yes.
I was glancing at that. It looks fun. I mean, I feel like we could go for quite a while talking about that schedule, but
Yeah. Yeah. Let's save that for next week. And actually be perfect because we'll just hint it with this. We'll save it for who it actually is going to be to the end of the show. Well, let's just say at the beginning, and it's probably going to give it away,
it's
honestly.
a native guy, isn't it?
Very big native guy, probably their biggest, and that probably gives it all away. But we'll keep people guessing for now anyway. I think without further ado, let's bring him on here, our guest for today, Mr. John Dalton. What's going on, man?
Hey, glad to be here. Glad to talk fishing or hunting or whatever we're talking about today.
Heck yeah.
I think Justin and I are learning fast that while we want to talk kayak fishing, and it will be mostly kayak fishing, we, like many other shows, have rabbit holes upon rabbit holes, which I'm sure you're used to with our good pal, Mr. Alex Rudd.
Oh yeah,
He's the king of rabbit holes. But dude, it's good to get you here on the show. And I think, like I told people before, if they are on YouTube watching fishing content and they haven't seen your videos, they probably live under a rock. But let's start from the beginning of it. You've kind of framed all of your content around creek fishing.
yeah.
I think that's something that's super cool because one, I think a lot of the country either doesn't know that they have creeks like that accessible to them, or either they just aren't able to hit it within the means that you're showing people, where it's super low budget, like super authentic in your means. And I'm just curious from that standpoint, when did that start for you? Has that been a lifelong thing? Just click one of the days you're coming home from work? You're like, screw it, I'm gonna go fish that creek. Like, how did it all begin for you, man?
It kind of began. I really my first memories and like passion began. My dad was a pastor of a church, and we lived in like a house that was right beside it. When I was 5, I think we like 5 to 10, we lived at this house, and there was a creek back there. There was a basketball court. We had like a basketball in the church, parking lot, and then a creek. And I would like just alternate between like basketball and going to the creek like all day throughout the summer. And I remember like vividly going to the creek, and this is a tiny, tiny creek. Like the deepest hole is like 2 foot. Like you can barely jump in and get wet all the way. But I would go down there and just catch and just observe and just I was fascinated with all the life that was in that little stream. And I'm from Bowling Green, Kentucky, or that's where I was born. But we lived in Kentucky and Tennessee all my life, so everywhere I've been, it's everybody fishes. It's like if you're from the country, everybody fishes. Like
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that didn't, but I never. But everybody just kind of goes and like bank fishes, or they go and throw out a line or go to a pond. And I really didn't know people that bass fished, really at all. So I would just go down there and catch little sunfish. And at the time, I didn't even know what kind of sunfish they were. I just remember I would catch this fish and then I'd catch this fish. And I know they're different, but there's nothing, there's, no internet, no one to ask. So I'm like, these fish are different. I know they're different. And I just remember that curiosity of like a kid has always been with me about small streams. And that's kind of where it started. And then through high school and stuff, is I was big into sports. And even after high school, I played basketball like twice a week, and worked on trucks. And I kind of got away from. I'd fish, but I kind of didn't go hardcore into it. And everybody that I knew all had boats. Like, and I'm like, I bought a boat for like a year, and then sold it. Just a cheap boat, and I just wasn't. I didn't really understand it. I really didn't get it. And I knew if I went out on the lake, I had no idea where a fish was. So if I'm going to fish, I would just go down the riverbank or creek and just toss in a worm or, fish for whatever. So, so it all comes full circle. When I moved to East Tennessee 9 years ago, sold my truck, sold my house with a garage, and moved into an apartment. And I'm like, I got to get something back into something. And I just started fishing some of the creeks around here. And the more I started doing that, the more I was like, hey, I forgot how fun this was. I kind of got back into it. Then I started exploring more places. Then I start catching 15, 16-inch bass and little holes that you'd think have nothing, or go to a place, and catch 5 or 6 different fish that I'm like, all right, now I got to figure out what species these are, because I'm curious about every fish that's in there. And that kind of grew I did that for like 2 years when I moved back over here to East Tennessee, because I did HVAC. So I moved here for a HVAC job. And then I was like, I started, this is 2015. And only thing I used YouTube for was to watch Tracy McGrady dunks. Like, let me type in highlight windmills or something. I didn't know there's anything else on YouTube. And then
Awesome.
then there's people start making fishing videos. And I think, remember, one of the first people I remember was like Bama Bass, like some of his old stuff.
OG.
Yeah. And like,
You talking about sorry to cut you off. You're talking about the top water blow ups.
Yeah,
and shaking the frog out of the
Tree hanging. Yeah, the tree hanging stuff. Yeah, like the technique is like, there's actually a technique to throwing your frog in the tree and hanging it above the water. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I don't know if this guy's crazy or a genius, but I love it. And I'm here for it. Sorry, keep going, John.
All you would see is all I've ever seen is just these montages or just big bass catching. And I remember I'd watch somebody and they'd be fishing something and they catch something that wasn't a bass, and they always call it a bluegill, no matter what species it was.
A brim. That's a brim.
It drive me crazy.
Bluegill with whiskers.
Yeah. I'm bluegill. And oh, why did that bite? They don't be so mad. I'm like, I want to catch that. At this point, I first off, I have no experience with computers, electronics. I still can't type. I hated social media. I was like one of the holdouts to get on Facebook when everybody was getting on Facebook. I'm like, I don't want to get on that. I'm like, all right, I guess I will. So computers and electronics and social media stuff is one of the things that I'm not even thinking about. But I noticed that I wanted to watch creek fishing videos. I wanted to watch somebody go to a creek or river, explore it, catch whatever's in there, and then show them correctly. And this was right when River Monsters was huge.
Yes.
But I loved River Monsters. I love the way they did it. I wanted the same style for creeks and streams. I just go explore. You're just going to explore. And yeah, so I'm like, somebody should make creek fishing videos. I kept saying that. And I can't find nobody. So finally I'm like, well, I got nothing else to do. I might as well, I'll try it. Awesome. I went and bought a camera. I went and bought a cheap laptop. I didn't have anything. And I went out and recorded a video. I took my cousin and my nephew to a little bridge. We went and caught some fish. That was my first video. And then I started messing around. And then, for first year, it went nowhere. It was horrible videos. I got 100 subscribers. But I was having fun with it. I was like, this is fun. It's pushing me to go explore more. So the next year goes by, and at the end of that next year, I'm at 3,000-4,000 subscribers. I started in 2016. About end of 2018, the first 2 winters, I didn't even fish in the winter. I didn't even know people fished in the winter. I didn't put out any videos. Then the third year, I'm like, you can catch fish in the winter. I didn't know this. So
they do exist.
I know nothing about real fishing or everybody I fished with, everyone just did it casually. So this is kind of pushing me to learn so much, and I'm just loving it and exploring, going new places, catching new fish, finding out what you can catch fish on, finding out where fish are. My third year of YouTube, it took a jump went from 4,000 to 20,000 subscribers in 3 or 4 months. It was in a spring. It just jumped. As soon as I hit 20,000, I in my mind, I knew I was quitting my job and I'm going to put all my effort into this. And I've been working hard on it. I've really been putting a lot of effort into it. And I was doing HVAC. And in the summer, when you do HVAC, we don't get off work till 8, 9 o'clock at night. So there's no time to go fishing. and then I'm on call every third week. So like I didn't like even if I was kayaking or whatever, I didn't have time to go out and spend all day fishing. So I was just doing things that were like I'd go fish 2 hours, after work or on a Saturday or something like that. So it went from that. I quit my job. I'm like, I'm just going to focus. And 2000 and it was right before COVID, like right before it. That's when I quit. COVID hit. I started fishing all over the place. That really helped my channel grow. And 4 years ago, I guess around 4 years ago now, I've been doing it. That's all I've done full time. Most of my money comes from YouTube AdSense. And I've just been trying to crank out videos, go explore everywhere I can fish.
It's freaking awesome, dude.
That is awesome.
I loved when you said no one's making creek fishing videos. You're like, screw it, I'll just do it.
Yeah,
and
you pioneered the whole thing.
Yeah. You're like, fine, if somebody's gonna do it, it's gonna be me. It's that I don't know if you guys have seen the reel on social media or on Instagram or anything, but from Avengers where Thanos goes, fine, I'll do it myself. That's John.
Yeah.
And here he is. You're at like what, like 120? You had 130 yet thousand?
I'm at 146,000 on YouTube.
Massive.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is. Like you made a couple points that I think at least they resonate with me. Those 15 and 16-inch fish. I mean, I love catching bigger fish, but I would do kind of the same sort of thing. I on the way to work, on the way home from work. Part of why I love kayak fishing is because I could just quickly throw it up on top of the car, take it down from the car, get in the water, and it's not like I'm out there catching trophies, but those 15 and 16-inch fish, even if you just catch a couple of them,
you're gonna find some. Yeah,
it's fun.
Yeah,
and I did that. I would go in these little tiny tributaries of the Potomac and do that. So it's I think it's really cool that you were able to do that kind of where you live. And I think it's like Bailey, you said earlier that there's so many people, like there's water like that everywhere. People can find creeks. So it's like what you're doing, you're the first one to do it. I think it just resonates with people.
Yeah. I never go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's everywhere. It's relatable, and I think that's the biggest thing. Where it's like, I feel like in your content, you've taught a lot of people, and from different perspectives. Where it's one, don't be afraid to go and explore. Right, it's one thing you hit on, but in regards to that, it's go try that creek you've drove or walked over 30,000 times in your life and never tried fishing it. Because like I think it's one thing you've shown people. It might look pretty dang shallow, but you'd be surprised what a fish lives in. And I thought that's one pretty cool. But also, I feel like you do a lot of good, man. I mean, there's so many different examples we could bring up, but even like one of your most recent ones about the Everglades and talking about your friend and what that meant to you. I feel like people get we see a lot of crap. I'll call it crap on media nowadays. And like, to me, listening to that today, that made my day. So it's like you get a lot of good out of it. So it's you blend a great personality, a great mission, but also it's, hey, I'm just exploring these small creeks and I'm catching more fish than you guys. So it's like it's cool too, and you whoop up on people in tournaments now too.
Well, kayak tournament is the last thing I thought I'd ever get into, but I love the tournaments, but I don't like doing them every week or like once a month. Like I get burned out doing like a 2-day tournament. Like I don't know how y'all do like 3-day tournaments and stuff like all the time, but it is weird how it like brings out a different like passion and different like I'm a huge sports guy. Like when I played basketball, when I step out on the court, my goal is to be the best basketball player on that court. And most of the time I was pretty good, but I wasn't like amazing or anything. But I bring that same attitude when I go kayaking. Like I may have never pre-fished that lake and have know nothing about it, but when I'm out on that water, I want to be the best angler at that point.
Yeah,
and it just pushes me to fish. And if you have fun with it, it's people love watching people have fun. And obviously that's why comedy and stuff does so well.
Yeah.
But
that's freaking cool.
So
man.
If my math is right, you said 2016, so that's 7 years you've had the channel going.
Yeah.
Is that so I guess if you had to pick a couple of things to somebody who's maybe new to fishing or new to that aspect, maybe they fished ponds or something else, what are some things you'd recommend to the newbie to creek fishing to kind of get them started?
Don't overlook anything. Like I have a greenway that in my town that my buddy told me it's world famous now. I probably got 20 videos fishing from it. The biggest fish I ever caught out of it is probably like a 12-inch bass. But we have Coosa bass, the red eye Coosa. It's one of the red eye bass, and they only get 10 inches long. But I'll catch they're 8 inches long. But there's bluegill, there's green sunfish, there's red ear, there's shiners, probably 3 or 4 other little species that you can catch. Now, this isn't bass fishing. This is just either ultralight or just multi-species fishing, as I call it. There and that's another thing. Like a lot of people don't know. Like my channel is a decent size, but like a lot of people in the bass world don't even know who I am because I'm not a bass fishing channel. So a lot of times people are like, "Oh, I didn't realize your channel's that big." I have so many followers that don't bass fish; they just fish for whatever, you know. So there's a lot more too. But if you're stuck on bass fishing, there's a lot other ways to fish. Now, if all you like is bass fishing and all you care about is catching a PB, there's channels for that. That's not my channel. My channel is about having fun. And then so if you just want to just go try anything. You know, you don't have to, and don't depend your success on how big the fish was. Just go explore, catch whatever you can catch. Downsize your lures to just pull out some stuff. Get an ultralight rod and a trout magnet, and see how many fish you can catch in an hour. You know.
Yeah, and what I love about that is, especially for me, it's a challenge of we've talked about it. I think we were talking about it with Russ, where it's like even if I'm out in the mangroves and the salt and I'm like skipping mangroves or whatever for snook, I'm sitting there, I'm like, yeah, bass would be right there. Not even thinking about where it's like for you, it's like, man, I could go catch crappie, I could catch bluegill, I could catch perch, I could catch bass, spotted bass. Like it's like thinking about all these things where my mind, and it's to a fault, where I'm just so bass centric. So that's what's cool about it. It's like, and you mentioned it earlier, like you held up 2 fish, and you're like, these are not the same thing. Like I would love to live in an age where we didn't know what what bass and these species were anymore, and there, like you said, there was no internet. It'd be so sick to be like one of the first people fishing. You're like, whoa, like what else am I gonna catch? I think that's something with people with you. It's like they're not going to just watch bass content. They're just watching a dude explore. And I think a lot of people in fishing right now forget that part. Like you hear some people talk about, I like fishing new lakes because of that new exploration feeling that they get on new bodies of water. Or it's just the whole, like as a kid again, you know, bringing out the fact of we're not going to practice for a tournament. We're just going to go have fun.
Yeah.
And there needs to be more of that. And I get that with you.
So, yeah, I don't, and that's I don't really like enjoy practicing for kayak tournaments that much. Like I went to the Susky, and actually the real yak dragger, he stayed at the house I was at, you know. So I got to go up to stay with some guys, and like I went up 2.5 days early. I bet I only fished 6 hours of those days. I went out like 2 days for like 3 hours, you know, found some fish, had some fun, went exploring. I was just like soaking it all in. And then it was good because I brought the wrong kayak up there for that term. I got wore out fighting the wind and current.
I have done that on the exact same river.
Oh my god, I didn't know everybody had a motor. Like, and that for me, the kayak like tournament kayak world still blows my mind. Like Bailey, you're used to it, you know. I've seen you do those big tournaments for a long time. Where when I go to these big tournaments, I'm like, oh, y'all been up here fishing for 7 days? Oh, or like, oh, y'all have like a motor, 2 motors. Oh, okay, you know. So
you're like, wait, there's practice? We can do that. John's like, oh, there's another river over here that looks more fun. I went over here. I went over here. Yeah. That's cool, man. When it comes to, like, say somebody that's seeing your content, it's a lot of people, and I'd say arguably you've gotten thousands of people into fishing, or at least into the idea of exploring a creek. And with that, like, say somebody's starting out, what are the most important, like, say if you had a top 3, the most important pieces of equipment that person can bring the first time going to fish a creek from a kayak specifically?
I would bring I would go with the second person, and I think that's if you can't find a second person just helps you do so much more. If you're gonna to look at stuff, to if you're getting into certain situations, or if you're floating a river to put in and take out. But if you're going by yourself, tell somebody where you're at, bring your life jacket and wear it, because no matter what the current is, I've flipped a couple times and it happens so fast. So, um, but find one or two fishing poles that you're comfortable with, 3 or 4 lures that you are comfortable with, and just go throw those lures and just go look around, have fun, explore, and just see what you come across. Just get out there and see what it is. Don't make up your mind about it before you're there.
I love that. That's so simplistic.
Simplicity, man. I'm constantly trying to do that because I'm a tackle junkie with so much stuff, way too many rods, way too much gear, and I'm constantly like fighting to try to pare down what I'm taking with me in the kayak. But since I got a tinier kayak this year, it's really forced me to. And some of those trips are the most fun, where it's just I don't have the motor, I don't have all the fancy electronics and stuff. I'm just in some smaller backwater place with a couple of rods and a couple of baits, and you don't have to think about should I switch to that color, or maybe if I try that bait. And it just, I don't know, everything's simple and it's fun. It's weird how that works.
I don't know, I kind of make fun of like these bass fishing channels in my mind. A lot of times they are right, but it's like they're talking to like 1% of the people, or like one situation, and I'm like, if you go to a creek or a stream, like even on the Susky, everybody's telling me, oh, you got to throw this, I'm like, I'm going to throw a spinnerbait and I'm going to catch fish, and I don't even color what care was, and I did. maybe I missed one that was a 1 inch bigger hit, I don't know, but I was catching like a ton of fish, and I did well for the situation I was in. But a creek or stream is like the fish, the smaller the body of water, the more concentrated. They're less picky. And that's what I love about it. Everything's more aggressive. They're just more predictable where they're going to be. So it doesn't, like, if you're throwing a chatterbait or a spinnerbait or a swim bait or whatever, it doesn't matter. If you throw it in front of that fish and he's in the area where he's eating, he's going to eat it. And that's where I like just pick up something, a moving bait in a something slow. Now, it can change, obviously. But for the most part, don't overthink it. Just go and start casting.
And Justin and I have talked about this. I am the worst ever when it comes to being simplistic like that. Like I think I could count maybe twice this year where I've had less than 5 rods in the kayak with me at one point. And like, dude, I've tried it where I've literally gone, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go out, I'm going to punch, I'm going to frog. And that's it. That's all I'm going to do. And I go and I put those in the truck and I come back and I'm like, well, the wind's blowing, I might want a chatterbait or like something I can, crank like a hybrid hunter with. And maybe I'll throw a trap. They might eat a jerkbait too. And the next thing you know, I got 10 rounds. I'm like, dang it. Like, this is exactly what I'm trying to avoid. And it's every time, man. It's like, then you go to baits, and it's like, you can do a couple different jerkbait colors. And then it's like, maybe a little bit deeper. I got to put a +1 in there. And it's like, okay, I got to stop. Like, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's my ADHD brain that does it to me, but it is so hard for me to do it. And the times I have, like when I fished Santee Cooper on the way home from Florida, the Harris chain tournament, and all I did was brought out a flipping stick and a spinnerbait rod, and I smashed them, and it felt so good because I'm sitting there, I'm like, I brought no tackle crate. All I brought was those 2 rods. I put 2 extra spinnerbaits in like the backpack of the Hobie, and then my camera stuff, and that was it. And I'm like, this feels amazing. My kayak went a whole mile per hour faster too.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, man, there's something to that. Like, obviously being prepared, there's people that find a lot of success. Like, like let's say like a Jody Queen, Justin, it seems to be very, detailed, in regards to down to a fine point, which works great for him. But then there's people that when they try to do that, like me, maybe they get too caught up in trying to do too much, where it might be easier for the people that are simplistic, like a John, a Drew Gregory, yourself, where it's like, keeping it simple allows less distractions and lets you focus on just where the fish are at. Because like John said, you find them in most of these situations, they're going to eat whatever you put in their face. So
Yeah, I think Drew calls them stupid fish, the unpressured ones.
Yeah, that's the ones I like to go for. That's what I love about kayak and skinny water stuff. They're just there. They're hungry, and not everybody's, people might not kayak through that section of water for weeks at a time. Then you go through there.
And then there's the other factor where it's just like current. Current is the ultimate negator. And I think a lot of people know that, especially nowadays. But it's like when you get in that situation, you got flowing water. It doesn't matter if you go float behind somebody. You're gonna, as long as there's more fish in there, you're good, which it's gonna be plentiful.
Most of when we do 3 people floats, I love being the last guy back, and half the time I catch more fish. It's about where you're putting that lure, and then sometimes the people in the front, if they're not hitting, especially if they're not hitting a bait, just crushing it, and you're in the back like picking off finesse fish after the other guys, and they're looking back at you like, "What are you doing?" You're like, I'm just just catching fish. There's a lot of different fish. You can't cast everywhere, especially around our rivers are all real fast. So if you're in a stream that you're flowing, you're moving through pretty quick. And that's where bringing less stuff is like, you can't have your rods up like any of our streams. You'll be in the trees the whole time. Mm-hmm. So you got to have everything in front of you. And then I like to take 3 rods if I'm doing a river like that. And I got a spinnerbait and a Helgramite and usually a backup rod, two styles, and that way you have them ready, and you got to be ready to cast. Though you're flowing through current, that's the biggest thing about that is you got to see ahead where you want to cast. You can't be looking back like, oh, I should have cast there. You got to look ahead and pick your spots.
Yeah, I've noticed that about your content, especially when you go on your trips with Alex and Josh.
Yeah,
where it seems like I do this just to poke fun at Alex because he can take it and he certainly dishes it. But it's like it always seems like he's always in the rush to be the first one, like leading the pack. And it's awesome because he's always turned back around and it's you or Josh catching fish. I'm watching your guys' content from the same trip, and you guys are just out like kicking his butt behind him because he's just going too fast.
That came back to bite me the other day. We went on a trip, and he had him and Josh, like they're in a race to get in the front, and it drives me crazy. But there's this one river that we fish, and there's just not a lot of fish in it. So, like that first cast in that good section, you catch a fish, and you're just not getting anywhere else. And the other day, he caught like 8 or 9. I caught like 2, because I'm not gonna rush to get in front of him because he always passed me back up. But yeah, but no, I don't mind. That's part of fishing with friends. Sometimes you just gotta. But yeah, several times they've been in front of me, and I'm catching more fish behind them, and they'll say that too. So it goes both ways.
I'm curious with this is getting off topic a little bit, but when you're fishing these skinny places, do you find that catching a big fish out of that skinny water is more fun somehow than catching them out of like a big place?
Oh yeah,
because I feel like that. I'm just curious if I'm the only one that like, to me, sometimes if I get in a skinny water and catch like a 3-pounder, I had the same kind of feeling as I did if I was out where everybody else is, maybe with the big boats, and catch a 6. It's just something about catching them where they're not supposed to be, or where maybe not where they're not supposed to be, but in a place where you wouldn't think they would be as much. Like that makes it like another aspect of it that makes that skinny water fishing fun for me.
Yeah, and that's the king of that little hole. Like that's the Mac Daddy that in that section, and he may be the biggest fish in there. I caught a 5-pound 4-ounce spotted bass out of a skinny river, and I couldn't believe it that was that big. I'm like, it was insane, but if I'd rather do that and go catch like a, I don't know, 8-pound bass out of a lake or something like that, because it was so cool. And it was in current, like it's fighting, and you're pulling your kayak around, but yeah, 3-pounder is a amazing catch out of any current, really, especially a small one. Now up at the Susky, that was like 3-pounders, like small up there, so that's a whole nother world. That was different. But like any other place there, it's like you hit that, you're like, wow, a 19-inch fish, that 14 thing. It's pretty exciting.
Heck yeah, man. Touching on the creek one last time, we're gonna let you go here in a minute. And obviously we have one last question for you past this point. But when it comes to the creek stuff, um, from a necessity, obviously you talked about earlier, like when you fish, always fish with somebody if you can, that sort of thing. But like from a product standpoint, whether it's like a tow rope or something like that, is there a must have or like a hack that you have, like to, like you talked about potentially with when you're in moving water, you're gonna flip eventually. Like, is there a little hack you have to either lose less gear, be prepared for something like that? Do you go out and flip on purpose type of deal just to like go through it, like understand it or something? Like, I don't know if that makes any sense, but do you have any like little hacks here and there for somebody that's fishing skinny water for the first time in a kayak?
Yeah, actually, I've been wanting to do a video where I like go flip all my kayaks just to see. But my first
Here's my
ever
6 kayaks. I'm going to flip every single one of them
yeah,
today.
I can't get them all in the river. I flipped my kayak on the first ever river float that I did, and there was two people in front of me. The guy in front of me got his lure stuck in a tree, like a little bush, and then because he got his rod up, I flow into him in current. I stick my hand up to kind of brace myself. My hand gets hooked in a lure in the tree, and I didn't realize it, but I couldn't get loose. So I flip under, I come back up, and my hand's still stuck in the tree. And I didn't know what was going on. I'm like, what is happening? Because I'm like just in shock. But I'm like belly surfing on the water. It's like 3 foot deep, but the current is so swift. So I had to reach over, get my pocket knife, cut the line to get myself loose. And it was like, wow, that could have been like and I wasn't wearing a life jacket also. So that was my first ever river float. So if I had to give somebody advice, it's like be very, very careful and just observant of everything you're doing because it takes a while to get comfortable. And even in, and you never know where current's going to come from. So, I mean, I other than just be looking forward and learning as much as you can about kayaking, it's hard to be prepared for anything that happens because don't underestimate any current. That's probably the biggest thing because it has got a lot of power.
I think you could say that too. Like, and that's a great point of like Mother Nature in general.
Oh, yeah.
Don't underestimate her. It's like, it's pretty windy. I think I'll be fine though. Yeah, it might be okay to go out, but like just be a little bit extra cautious. But especially current, man. Current is one where it's like, you can't be too crazy with current, especially when it, like we were talking about, it can come out of nowhere very unexpectedly.
Especially if you're in a new kayak or it's a something new to you and you're not as comfortable with it because you don't know how it operates. That's a big difference.
Yeah. Yep. Justin, you got anything to add to that from your side of things too?
Oh, not real. I mean, you guys kind of said it. Like sometimes I still, at places like the Susquehanna, you get in some of those rapids and it's really fast. And that's a little faster than I'm comfortable being in places. But I've had times where I'm coming up, getting ready to go through a rapid, and I'll stand up a lot of times to try to scout. But I've had situations where the seam, like the area that you're trying to target, looks really similar to a rock just under the surface where the current's hitting it funny. And I almost went through one my last trip up to the Susquehanna where I was like, it just looked a little bit sketchy. I was like, let me just back off and take a different route down through here. And when I came around it from the backside, sure enough, it was a giant rock. I'd have come through and it would not have gone well. I'd have been, trying to chase down rods and whatever I could. But the current, it doesn't matter how many times you've been out there, how long you've been doing it, it'll humble you.
If you're going down, for me, when I'm going, especially on new rivers, if I see like a strainer and it's a bend, I'm getting out and walking it because you don't know what's around that bend. Or if you even think that there's like boulders in the current, like because those will spin you around. Yeah, I mean, most of the time it's pretty shallow, or get out on the bank, paddle over the bank and walk it. And I have a rope tied to my front of my kayak and I let my kayak float down and I'll walk a ton of them. And it's a good time to get out and stretch sometimes. So, don't be afraid to get out of your kayak. Like some people, they have so much stuff on their kayak, they can't step out of it. That's why I like my skinny water kayak. I can step right out of it when I need to. And that's got me out of a lot of situations, especially if I see a tree or something or overhang or a big boulder or log that's sticking out, and you're like, oh, I got to get out. I'm not gonna be able to make it through that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point. Last question I had for you, unless you got something, Bailey.
I got one, but it has nothing to do with kayak fishing.
Well, that was,
Yeah,
and
you
we
got something else. Hit him with it.
I was thinking you mentioned doing HVAC work before, and I was curious if you had any fun stories from that. You know, I don't I'm not a I have I don't know anything about that, but I'm curious.
Getting
Does
under
it involve?
houses and everything.
Yeah,
I've gotten very used to going into nasty, nasty houses, and I had learned to not even look around. I've been in houses that were so disgusting that like I don't even want to look at the walls or what's around the house. Or you go in houses that are about you gagging and you're like just you can't even breathe because it's like so nasty. Those are probably the worst. Like there was one house, there's been a few, but the more I do it, I would just block it out. I would be like, I don't know, I could just like turn it off and like I don't want to see it. There'd be like cobwebs all around insides of the house, and like dogs and just cockroaches and like those are the yeah. I'd rather be in the dirt crawling under a house than like inside those houses. But
Oh,
a lot of
jeez.
spiders and cobwebs and just filthy. You're crawling or getting called out in the middle of the night and it's like 10 degrees out. You got to go fix somebody's heat. Those are
Oh
some
man.
great times. But
I
Have
can
you
see
ever
why
ran into like a rattlesnake or anything out of those houses?
no, I mean, I would see a possum or raccoon or wild cats or something every once in a while, but like I don't know. There's probably so many times that I've run into stuff that most people would be like make a big deal out of it, but I'm like so used to seeing it. I'm like, oh, that's nothing. Like I don't even. That's not a big deal.
dude. I see why you wanted to get into YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Mainly the on call, like that can be rough. Like especially at a small company. I was on call every third weekend. That's like all day Saturday and Sunday, just waiting if a call comes in. You might work
The,
all weekend, you might not work at all. You're just on standby.
the whole 48 hours.
Yeah.
That's,
Easy.
And then you're on call. There's nights, so everybody has to be on call at night. So I could go home at 6, get called back in at 7, get back at 9, get called back in at 10. So yeah, that's that part of HVAC. That's why I quit so early because if it was a set hours, I would have loved to try to stay longer. But I didn't have nothing was set. It's so it just takes up all your time when you're a technician. You get paid good in the summer, but you work all the time.
well, now you got your
Gotcha.
dream job.
There you
Yeah,
go.
I get. I don't like editing. I sure don't like that part of it. But for every day I edit, I can go out and fish. So it's a good. Yeah, I never thought I'd be here. And if it lasts another month, I'll be happy. But if it lasts another 10 years, I'll be happy. I guess I have no idea where this is gonna go.
Hey, it's like you're exploring a creek, man. You're just
Yeah,
focused on what's around that next bend. That's right.
that's right.
That's all it is. That's awesome, man. And seriously, we mean it when I say you're one of the better people I've met in this industry. And keep doing you, man, because
Yeah.
the content speaks for itself. There's a reason so many people attach themselves to following you and what you're doing. So keep it up because it's quality. It's what the fishing industry needs. And you're a hell of a dude. So and I'm also you're kind enough to come talk to us two jabronis here on this show. So appreciate you nonetheless making the time, man.
Yeah, man. Really appreciate it, Bailey and Justin. Appreciate you having me on.
Thanks,
Heck yeah,
John.
dude. Well, dude, we will be talking to you real soon, and hopefully get you back on here soon to talk about some more creek fishing, some of that juice you like to unlock and quote unquote freeze your connection on.
Yeah.
So whatever you want to talk
Maybe my
about.
internet will work better next time. Yeah,
Yeah. But seriously, thank you, man, and we'll be talking to you soon.
yeah, man. Appreciate it.
See you, John. Well, there you have it, folks. Mr. John Dalton from Creek Fishing Adventures. If you have not, for whatever reason, seen any of his videos or follow him on social media, all the links to that will be down in the show description, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on MP3. Just click the show notes, and all the links will take you right there to his page. Encourage you to follow along because once you do, you will not stop. pretty much guarantee that. But man, dude, Justin, it's a refreshing way to fish. And it's like my heart still lies in, going offshore and chasing big smallmouth and stuff. And I do love technology, but there is something to be said about even for guys in boats, man. Like as a kid, running around with your friends, exploring creeks, like there's something to getting back to the legitimate basics of fishing where I'm gonna grab one rod and I'm gonna go explore this creek by my house.
Yep.
It's
It
just
reminds me of turning over rocks and trying to catch crawdads and just all the fun stuff you do when you're little. It yeah, I don't know how to like to me John's like the perfect ambassador for that. Like it's because like you and I are fish heads, like bass heads specifically. And it's like he made a point where he's talking about the industry as a whole. There's a lot of, he's talking about guys on the bass side that, don't know him. Like we get so absorbed in just bass, but there's a huge part of the fishing industry that, they just want to catch a fish, want to feel a bite, feel that tug, land a fish. They don't care if it's, 5-pounder or if it's a 6-incher. And I think that's like I don't know if he did it on intentionally or if it just worked out that way, but I think it's genius from a marketing standpoint to like you've got such a big audience when you just go fishing.
Yeah, and I think there was definitely something to and credited to the whole COVID thing. COVID was obviously great for the fishing and outdoor industry. There was a big boom. Obviously, there was some hecticness amongst when you look at a business side, but and some things are starting to come back down to normal here. Like this year, I think there was a decrease actually overall in the license sales for fishing and hunting. A pretty big drop actually compared to the COVID years. But again, like we can't compare anything to the COVID years because that was like an anomaly when it comes to that. But for him, like when you think about it, anybody making content, it seemed like did well during the COVID years. And it seemed like there's a lot of things that popped up in the COVID years because it was time where either people were getting laid off or there's less to do. So it provided them time to do so. Some of them have dropped off since because they're back to a normal schedule. But like for John, it was perfect because one, he had already made the jump. So it wasn't because of COVID that he made the jump. He said he made the jump right before COVID, and then COVID allowed all these people that were cooped up sitting outside their house to watch this guy in middle Tennessee go fish these creeks wherever the heck he wants and explore and walk and talk his way through it. So it was perfect timing then. But even now, I'd argue it's great because what is the big, especially from a bass fishing side, what is the biggest topic right now in bass fishing? Technology.
Oh, you mean forward facing sonar, all
Yeah.
the
So like, and obviously we're for it, like we're for technology type of deal, but like it's still a nice breath of fresh air to go see a guy with no electronics, kayak and 2 rods, and go catch the crap out of crappie or spotted bass or whatever the hell is living in that creek. There, I think in a, and I say this too, and it's somewhat hypocritical because in Serious Angler we talk about it, and I try to steer away from some of that conversation now, but it seems like questions from people, they come to us as a resource for it. So it is nice for me to just go and not talk about it for a while. It's a when there's this arms race going on, it's nice to see that it gives people that time away from that talk. It's like, okay, it's somebody that's just doing it all natural. And I've gotten comments of that lately because I have all of these videos stocked up of me using electronics to find fish and things like that for my YouTube. But recently I've been just using that Hobie iTrack, that inflatable, and posting content around that. And people are loving it. They're like, yes,
snagging
more of
carp.
this. I'm sitting there at dilemma, man. Yeah, I did snag carp. That was nuts. I'm sitting there in dilemma. I'm like, this is what they want. It is fun, but I also want to go scope some big smallmouth offshore. And it's like, do I post it or not? It's like it's one of those things, man, where it's gonna come down to just like post what you want to post. But for John's case, he's posting refreshing content for people. I think that's important. So, but nonetheless, great show with John. Appreciate everybody tuning in for that. And now we get into our last segment of the show each week that sounds like people are beginning to really love and enjoy. We're trying to put more time towards it. Not even just bass focus, but we're trying to pull in some salt people, things like that. And if you guys hear your name called, if you guys want the clips to share any of this, by all means, reach out to us. We happily send that along to you guys. But our kayak fishing kings and queens of the week. Justin, kick us off.
All right. I want to start with there was a recent Central Florida Bass Nation Open. I believe it was last weekend on Fellsmere Lake. For anybody that knows, it's also referred to as Headwaters. I've been down there myself a couple times, some big fish down there. But Doug Wilson, shout out to him. He's our first king of the week. Won that tournament, 91 3/4 inches. Impressive total anywhere. And believe it or not, it's their season opener, which I thought was kind of funny because it's like, at least where I'm at, it's like the season, we're at the tail end of the season. They're already kicking off the new season. But yeah, nice. First king of the week, Doug Wilson, out of fishing big tournaments down in Florida.
So I feel like you are made for Florida because you mentioned how you're a spawn guy. They have 3 spawns down there, and it lasts for like 6 months. I think Florida's calling your main, man. It's like your retirement plan.
I know the only thing that it makes me hesitant to try to like end up down there is the summer. Like it's so hot for like the months when it's prime time fishing for you in New York. It's like, I mean, even the guides are off the water at like noon because it's unbearable. That's the only part that
we'll have a Serious Angler Network timeshare. We'll have a house in New York and then a house in Florida or Texas we can run to in the winter months, where all the whole crew will have it be like the fisherman's headquarters, if you will, where we can
I like it. Snowbird kayaking.
Yeah, shoot. I mean, that's what I've been thinking about too. My parents live in Florida now. It's like, why would I stay here in Buffalo? And the bass fishing sucks right now. Like to catch a largemouth right now, it's tough-ish. It's just funny to say in the north, they're like, yeah, well, it's tough-ish all year round here in the south. But smallmouth is still pretty good, but it gets pretty brutal here. So like from here to like March. So it might be nice to go down to Florida for a while. But nonetheless, that was just a total wild card idea.
We got a month and we'll be down there with Hobie. A little over a month, I think. And it's I honestly think there'll be some spawners on that one. I think it's lining up with, I think, a full moon. I'd have to go double check it, but I thought full moon, and I bet there's a wave of spawners. Maybe not a huge one, but I bet there's some spawners in January.
Well, I will be rooting you on from a beach in Punta Cana with a margarita.
Honeymoon week. Honeymoon.
Yeah, I would get cut and left for dead on that if I decided to do that instead. But no, just to keep things rolling here, our second kayak fishing king of the week is to a man that obviously has had a lot of success. And that is one that it doesn't even have to do with bass. It's not even conventional fishing, which actually is poking some fun at Andy, the captain over at Serious Angler, because he's been fly fishing lately.
Yeah, but it's to the man, right?
Yeah, and for steelhead. That dude's a wizard. This guy's a wizard too in the kayak space, and that is the man himself, Guillermo Gonzalez, catching 2 muskies on the fly from the kayak in the same day. And this is amazing content. We'll put his link to his pages down here in the notes, along with everything else that we mentioned from John, our guest for today. But what's a really funny story on this? Christine posted a pretty cool video. Obviously, Guillermo's posted some pictures from it. Those two do amazing content together. Great photographers. They have the right equipment to put up some cool stories. But she had a video of Guillermo catching one of these muskies in the fly. And he's like freaking out behind her, catching it. She's running up to go net it for him. And I'm trying to remember the page. Some page reposted it. It was like a muskie page reposted it. And just previously, they'd reposted mine where that big tiger muskie had surfaced next to my kayak. And so I'd been chatting with the guy for a little bit. I don't know why I think he just attributed it to like from following my page, not being familiar with kayak fishing and posting my content, that he, for whatever reason, posted that it was me, that I was Guillermo, and tagged me in it instead. Tagged me and said that I was with Christine. And I'm like, well, look, as much as I would love to have the dashing looks that Guillermo has, that is not me in that post. So cool little side story on the same content that we're talking about. But Guillermo, man, he is just your true, like the same way Christine is. Like those two are destined for each other, and the fact that they are straight up fish heads, like muskie, bass, whatever it may be. Even when it comes to shooting stuff with ducks and deer and all that, they're just true ambassadors of the outdoors, and that's what I love about those two. And so Guillermo, I don't think Guillermo gets enough credit for one, how successful and consistent he is in his true intuition for the sport, but also the great human he is and the passion that he brings to the people around him. So I know that's long spieled here for our second kayak fishing king, but encourage you guys to follow along with Guillermo, one of the best dudes that we have here in the side of kayak fishing. But who's our third and last one this week, Justin?
Third and last one, we're going to do something a little different. I've got a handful of guys here from another tournament. This is the Oklahoma Bass Nation Championship. Now, it happened first week of December on Lake 10 Killer. So this is a qualifying event for the Bassmaster Kayak Series Championship, which is also going to be on 10 Killer. So these are the 5 guys that punch their ticket to that tournament on the same lake this upcoming March. So I thought that was kind of cool. And
this was tight too.
Yeah, very, very close. But I'll go through. I apologize to any of these guys whose names I butcher. But Tim Boyden was a tournament winner. So he had a total of 86 inches. Then Shane Moore, just behind him, runner-up with 85. Michael Galbraith was third, and this was actually a tiebreaker with 84 inches. He had an 18-inch kicker, and so he edged out Josh Landreth, who ends in fourth, and then Jimmy Thomas with 83 3/4 in fifth. So you're talking just a couple inches separating first and fifth. But huge congrats to all those guys, because that's not only are they going to the championship, but it's actually on the same lake, which I thought was kind of cool. So I won't be surprised if I see any of those same names, hopefully when I'm out there in March.
That those guys were fiending to make that top 5 for that event.
Oh, yeah.
But, dude, anytime you have a tiebreaker in the top 3, that's a pretty tight tournament, especially when they're literally only 2 inches behind first. It's pretty incredible. Like, that is awesome to me.
You're talking at any one of those guys, one bite could have made the difference,
Yeah, like, dude, that's a difference between a 13 or a 15. Like, it's crazy the difference that could make. But that's super cool. Congrats to the guys that get to qualify for the championship, the Bassmaster Championship there. Congrats to Tim Boyden on the win. That's a super cool case, Justin. So bravo to those folks. I'd say we have usually have 3 a week, but that is now that's 7. Our 7 kings of the week.
It's a lot this week.
More the merrier. That's right. But so to round this out for you guys, that was our kayak fishing kings and the week. Hope you guys are enjoying that segment. But to round out our show for today, before we sign off here, next week we kind of hinted at it earlier, and I'm sure a bunch of people guessed it already. Mr. Greg Blanchard is going to be coming and joining us here on the show. He's going to talk through some of his new the native Titan X setup, but also just talk with Greg because he's been all over the map. I don't know if people know, but Greg actually started his fishing career, if you will, and YouTube here near me. Like, I grew up fishing against Greg when I was in high school, getting into a kayak. My first ever tournament, Greg won. And it was, first ever tournament, kayak tournament I fished. Greg won, and I lost. I was second to him by a quarter of an inch. It was a super cool story. So we'll throw it back a little bit. Back when he had like maybe 1,000 subscribers, maybe didn't even have his channel yet. But grew up by me in the Cayuga area. That's why you guys see him retreat back all the time. But Greg's a super cool dude. Got a lot of history, and we'll get him on the show to talk about all of it. So it's going to be a cool show for next week. But and John Dalton, great dude. Thank you again to John for joining us. Justin, any remarks you got about today's show?
Shoot, I enjoyed it. I love talking that backwater creek fishing, and I'm pumped next week. Greg's stuff, believe it or not, I watched his stuff even when I was living in California. I was south of him, so when I couldn't get on the water, I would watch his Clear Lake stuff, and I would watch his California Delta stuff. that would get me through the winter. Like watching him,
Yeah.
him set the hook on those punch fish. So yeah, I can't wait to talk to Greg.
Heck yeah. It's going to be super fun. Appreciate you guys for tuning in as always. We've been kicking this show off the ground here. Coming up on a month and a half of Kayak Fishing Weekly being in existence. And we'll be rounding it out with I guess, technically would it be next week or 2 weeks from now? Would be the Christmas show. What is next week? I guess next week would be kind of our Christmas show, if you will, because it'll be coming out on the 21st, Christmas on the 25th. So hopefully you guys are traveling safe for any Christmas plans coming up, anything like that. And safe. Hopefully you guys are getting your stockings full of some goodies coming up here soon. But we will have a show coming up for that Christmas week. We will have one come out for the 28th. So no worries there on missing anything. But Justin, another great show. Appreciate the folks as always. And we'll see y'all next week. Peace.